Well, hello, YouTubers, Facebook, Patreon, and Twitter. This is Katherine Johnson, servant of the Lord. I want to thank you for tuning into my YouTube channel. Well, if you like what you hear, subscribe. I'm coming back to you with part 4 of The Global Reset is Coming. I want you to listen to part 1, 2, and 3 before you listen to part 4. But by part 4, I'm going to expound on what I spoke about in part 3, particularly about Japan. You've just heard about Japan having a 7.0 earthquake. Well, God is showing me it's going to hit a 10 or 12. Japan, Haiti, Chile are several of the countries that are going to be devastated by earthquakes and tsunamis. I mentioned about a partial submersion in water. Well, that's what God is showing me for Japan. The next earthquake that's going to hit is going to be a 10. It's going to hit a 12. And that's where you're going to see the devastation, where one of our countries is going to be submerged up underwater permanently. God is showing me California. There's a devastation coming there. There is a 12 earthquake that's coming to California and a huge tsunami, a 200-foot wave that's going to hit that area. There is a revival going on there now, and God is holding it back. But once that revival has stopped, then devastation is going to come. And this is the judgment. God has been warning that area for years about their ways, and they have not repented. So he's pulling out those that love him. You see a massive exodus from California that's occurring, and that's because of what people know, they fear, because of what they're experiencing while they're there. The earth is not stable in California. So many of them see, and the economic system is also devastated. That's God's judgment. So you're seeing a lot of changes. Also on the East Coast, you're going to see a lot of devastation on the East Coast. Look for a massive type of virus plague on that East Coast that's going to be coming. It's going to be unknown, but it's going to cause a lot of deaths. They're going to say it's the COVID-19, but it's going to be something else. They're not going to be able to pinpoint it for a while, but deaths are going to occur on that East Coast. Look for a lot of earthquakes shaking on the earth on that East Coast, specifically near New York area, and that in Boston, those areas, Virginia, Pennsylvania, those areas in that general area, you're going to see a lot of shaking and possibly rising of water levels where there's a lot of flooding. And this is going to go on through the summertime. It's not going to decrease. Even with changes they do in the infrastructure, it's not going to decrease. There's also a earthquake-like crater that's going through. It actually splits the United States in half. You're going to start getting reports about shaking that they fear that the United States will split in half and water will separate it. This is what God is showing me. These are all parts of the birth pangs, the end time where there's constant earthquakes that increase in intensity and frequency. So pay attention to what's going on. Do not be afraid. Be prepared for what's to happen. And God said, get to higher ground. God is showing me that not only is there going to be a divine global reset, there's going to be a divine reset. And God's glory and grace is going to manifest in this time and season. People will see God's glory. God is doing it so people can make a decision as far as who they will serve. There will be a preaching of the gospel of the kingdom by God's remnant. And also God is showing me in this time, President Trump, he is still the president. This is what God is showing me. He's given him another assignment. He's going to be in this end times. He's going to be utilized by God to deal with the powers that be. Many are going to follow him. He will be involved with a lot of supernatural things in the end time. So God is using him for a purpose. Everything is happening for a reason. I spoke about on my other social media platform about a window. A window is going to open where there's going to exposure of the voting irregularities. There's going to be a battle to stop it, and there's going to be a reversal for a window of time. So look for that in the coming months. God is raising him up for a reason, but he's given us a window so people can see what happens. So God, they know God is who he says he is. Because many are losing hope because there's been a lot of pushback about the presidential election. But God is going to expose it in this time and season. It's going to cause a division in this nation. But God, you're going to know who serves God and who doesn't. And a lot of patriots that are not saved, they're going to come to know God. So look for that in this time and season. God always shows me the church. He said the church is going to go up under major renovation. A wrecking ball is getting ready to hit. And global reset. There's going to be a complete and total suppression. But certain churches are going to be allowed to preach. But they're going to be preaching another gospel. So look for that. The remnant, God is showing me for a brief period of time, they're going underground. You will not see them. You would think the church is dead. And you will visit churches, but they will not be preaching the gospel. Those that know their word, they won't be preaching the gospel. Every message they have is going to come from a metaphysical point of view, or this, you can get up and do this, but nothing about Jesus. So you look for that. Also, with the coming attacks on the church, you're going to see a lot of cowardice. And not only in the church, but in the world with men. God is saying they're going to start running. It's like they're afraid. They're going to push women in front of them. And women are going to have to come forth and fill those shoes that men should be filling. Now, this is what God is showing me. But in the church, you're going to see it evident. I see like a massive panic in the church. A lot of ministries are going to point fingers at other ministries. They're not allowing us to do this, but they're allowing them to do it. We posted this and we got censored, but they posted, why didn't they attack them? You're going to see a lot of that. They're going to be pointing fingers at each other and a lot of cowardice and malice, okay, toward one another. God is exposing this for a reason. For a reason. God is saying he does not like this behavior, but he is exposing it for a reason. So if you're one of those, God said repent and face whatever you have to face. God said this is a time to be brave and bold, not to run, not to get behind people or point somebody out even though you're the target, but cause someone else to be a target. It's not their turn, but it's your turn to face the powers that be. God said he's given us enough grace and he will be with us in this time and season. He will protect us, but many of us are going to have to give our lives. God told me in the church there's going to be a normalcy variance and acquiescence, meaning that things are going to be the same. Nothing has changed. People are going to go along to get along. You're going to see that in some churches. They're not going to, certain things they won't speak about because they don't want to be censored. God said avoid those churches. There are going to be a lot of mainline churches, 501c3s. They've been offered money and they've compromised his word. He says avoid them. God told me relationships, with marriage relationships, God is going to give you discernment. There's certain people in the house of God you cannot fellowship with. Be careful with marriage proposals or someone prophesying your husband. If God didn't reveal it to you, or your wife, if God didn't reveal it to you, then the prophecy is false. Or you're going to have this ministry. If God didn't reveal it to you, the prophecy is false. God is going to be revealing to his servants before anyone comes and speaks to them. So be aware that it's going to be a lot of deception, a lot of false prophecy. People are going to come, parking lot prophecies. Be careful with that. Be careful. It's important to discern what is going on now. There's a lot of deception, a lot of delusion. Stay focused on God. I hear the Lord saying, stay focused on his word. He will reveal to you in due season. This is a time to walk in love. A lot of people are angry. There are a lot of people that are homeless. They've lost their jobs. They are scapegoating other people. They want to blame someone. They want to take out their frustration on someone. God said, be careful in this time and season. Walk in love. Sometimes it's best not to say anything. Just pray and have compassion on people. But God said he'll let you know when it's time to speak. Just let them talk because there's a lot of anger. People going to snap. You're going to see a lot of suicides, a lot of homicides. Just the spur of the moment, they snap. But you're going to see a lot of homicides with young people and older people. Look for the healthcare industry to change drastically. It's going to be sinister. It won't be evident. But there's going to be a lot of denial of services, critical services, especially for elderly people or people that have pre-existing conditions. You will see the true manifestation of this Affordable Care Act, how it's implemented in other countries. It's things you don't see, but you're going to start seeing certain services like dialysis, open heart procedures, or newborns that need intensive care services, open heart. A lot of those services are going to be denied and people will die. The general consensus of people's mindsets are going to be so oppressed. They're going to be so quiet and distracted. It's going to be really hard to really interact. You're going to have to do a lot of praying. You'll see what I'm talking about. God said you'll see it. You'll be able to go in and out of them, but you cannot interact with them. There's a wall that's been built up, and that's the enemy. God said pray for that wall to come down because a lot of them are being captured in that wall. Pray for it. I had the Lord saying there's a coming time of another superbug that's coming, and this is going to be man-made. Another superbug. I hear the Lord saying that we need to be vigilant. We need to be watchful because the enemy is coming. I see a lot of the mindsets of the people. God's people are so oppressed that it's really hard to even, I mentioned it before just a few minutes ago. You'll notice that it's hard to interact with them. God said just use love. Be compassionate. Love will allow you to endure in this time to the end. To show compassion to people, even though they're nasty, just show compassion. And love has its limitations, but show compassion within that limitation. You don't allow anyone to use you as a punching bag and, or a doormat, but you use love and you open up, you stretch yourself as far as God lets you, because people are going to need that in this time and season. There's so much confusion. There's so much deception. Be aware of false teachings that are coming from the church. A lot of new teachings. And it's going to be a shock because a lot of them are from mainline ministries. They're going to come out with new teachings, just far-fetched, just out of space teachings. It's going to shock a lot of people. And those that follow them, some of them want to be diehard followers. But there's going to be a lot of exodus from that. People are going to be looking for the true gospel. But God told me to tell you this. He said to read his word. His word is true. A lot of leaders are going to be struck down in the house of God. He said, striking the sheep and the shepherd would scatter. He said, no man is going to take his glory. No man will take his glory. He says, tired of people, following the leader to hell. A lot of parishioners have followed their leaders to hell. God says, time out. He said, either you serve me, you worship me, or you're going to worship the Satan. This is a time where new ministries will rise up that are gifted and called. They're remnant. God told me to tell you, be careful with how you mingle with other ministries. Sometimes it's best to be by yourself with whoever you have. Just do the work of God. Don't be focused on what other people are doing. They may want you to come and join or come and expound on what they heard you said on social media. God said if he tells you not to go, don't go, because they can always see you on social media. You don't need to expound on it. Just let them receive what God has given you. But it's a trick of the enemy to lure you into a trap where you're not supposed to go in certain places because God is dealing with them. So be careful. Some of us will be going into tombs. And you'll know as soon as you walk in the door, you won't be able to breathe. God has sealed them up. They should not be operating, but they're fighting God through the devil. Please don't be a part of that. I know I'm going deep with this message, but God is telling me to go deep. Be very careful with your surroundings. Watch and pray. The enemy is attacking. He's going after people. Please be careful. Watch and pray. A lot of the words that are going to be spoken now, people are not going to want to hear it. They're going to start attacking prophets, calling them terrorists. So look for that. God is going to protect us, but be prepared for what is to happen. Be careful what you say. When God tells you not to say it, do not say it. There's coming a time where there's going to be a lot of blackouts. You're going to see homelessness suddenly. People are going to be in shock. You're going to see people living in their cars. Some of you are going to go to certain stores early in the morning, and you're going to see a lot of cars out there. You're going to wonder, why is it so crowded? Well, they've been sleeping there all night. So you're going to see a lot of that. They're going to be where it's safe. Be prepared for a lot of violence, a lot of attacks on saints, particularly Christian women. Phone calls, people gang stalking. Be prepared for that. Be prepared for saints in the house of God coming after you. Like I mentioned earlier, inviting you places. People that you hardly don't talk to. All of a sudden they're calling you. They're so overjoyed and they want you to do something. God said, don't do it. Heed the warning. It's a trap. We're in the end times. Some people don't want to admit it. There's been a lot of deception. God is showing me, even with this virus, it was done deliberately to bring in a new world order, to establish what they want, and it's going to go just the way they want. Once they get what they want, it's no more virus. So God said, be aware of that. But he's showing me a lot of cowardice in the body of Christ. I don't know why. He's showing me the men are going to run. They're going to point fingers at other ministries. Why didn't they shut them down? They shut us down. Why is she doing this? There's going to be a lot of talk against women ministers. A lot of anger and resentment. The word speaks about this. They're going to hate one another. They're going to be offended. A lot of offense. See, God is going to raise up ministries in the end time, whereas people will not even be able to understand them because they're in darkness. And it's really hard to understand someone that says they're a saint in darkness. But you're going to see a lot of saints, so-called saints, walking in dark. They cannot discern because they rejected God. They're only in name. You're going to see a lot of Christians in names only. You're going to know them by their fruits. God said, know them by their fruits. They don't have fruit. So a Christian bears fruit. They don't have fruit. So they're not. They don't have the oil. They're unwise virgins. God said, you will know them. But they're going to come up because God is judging them. They've been warned. Certain ministries. And be careful when they come around you, remnant. Because their sacrifices have not been received. This is the one I keep saying this. This is not causing division in the church. It is a warning to those God is using. Because there's ministries Satan is going to use to destroy you. They will try to exploit you and cast you to the ground. If someone comes to you and they're bringing a lot of distractions, God says that's a warning. That's the enemy. You're going to see a lot of lust demons operating through witchcraft. God said you have the authority to bind them. And God said he'll expose who's doing it and deal with them. He said just to pray about it. A lot of seduction, sexual seduction. So God is telling me, any of you listening to me, if you have a attraction to pornography, you have an habitual sin, God said to give it to him because the enemy will come in and use it. He's coming to find himself in you, and he will attach himself like a magnet. So give it to God so God can repent, give it to God so God can cover it with his blood. He cannot come and accuse you. So God has given me these words for you. He said he saved his best for last. And his last is his best. So be encouraged with that. Rewind this message if you need to and listen to it over and over again to get what God has given you.